Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Pod and the Pendulum, the horror movie podcast covering all of your favorite franchises, one movie and one episode at a time. As always, I'm one of your hosts, Mike Snoonian, and joining me once again in the co-host chair, I hate saying the Ygor to my Dr. Frankenstein, because that just doesn't sound... Because you really are like the Dr. Frankenstein. You really are the genius. You're really the Dr. Waldman of these episodes.
I can live with Waldman. Yeah, that's fine.
You're the measured, you bring the intelligence, you're measured, you bring, you're not the mad scientist of the crew. You're Mr. Brian Kuiper. Brian, how are we today?
Doing good, and I'm glad to be back. Even the lowest point in this series is still pretty great.
It's still pretty fun.
It's still pretty fun. I have a good time with all of these.
Yeah.
So.
And I have found sometimes the movies that I don't love are the easiest ones to talk about because, there's no sacred calves at that point. Do you know what I mean? You feel like the gloves can come off a little bit.
Yeah.
So you don't.
I mean, and we can debate whether this is actually the low point of the movie or not. I'm open to that. So
Okay. But also with us this week,
our
us,
guest seems to be unsure. So
I'm
interested to hear.
Well, our guest today, it's been a little bit. I think maybe it's been since Phantasm Oblivion, one of the Phantasm movies. Joining us once again, Mr. Andrew Fabry. Andrew, how are we doing?
Doing great. I can't decide. I don't know. It's definitely in the lower ends. I referred to this when I was reaching out to Mike about this. I referred to this as one of the lesser Frankensteins. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's the least. I'm unsure about that. It could be. It definitely feels like I've been trying to find the Marvel equivalent for this movie. Placeholder movie that almost seems to just exist for there to be other sequels movie. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure which. I know there's a Marvel movie that would be the best example of that, but I just
Ant-Man.
The first Ant-Man, maybe.
Or it's something where it's a pleasant watch but inconsequential.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. Yeah,
and Paul Rudd carries off children. Things like that.
Yes, indeed.
Paul Rudd throws people off of buildings. So
yeah. Glad to be here. Yeah,
always a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah.
So. But Brian and I have spoken, I think, at length in previous episodes about our great love for Frankenstein and Universal Monsters. So we're going to turn it over to you. And I am curious to hear, were you a monster kid? Did you fall in love with Universal early on? And in particular, when did you fall in love with Frankenstein?
So it's kind of I was trying to think about, because I knew you were going to ask this question. I was trying to think about the first time I became aware of Frankenstein. And that's, I don't know, maybe that's just because I grew up in the late 80s, early 90s, that it's kind of I don't know, he was just there, he was just doing a thing. My first exposure may have been Scooby-Doo and the Reluctant Werewolf.
You're
maybe
the second person to say that. Wow.
Yeah, may have been. I'm not 100% sure, but I was always
man, that's a good point.
Yeah,
not realizing that, but I think so.
Yeah, and but I remember. So what got me into the Universal Monsters, specifically? I mean, I was a horror kid, even when I was when I was my favorite cartoons were Scooby-Doo and the Real Ghostbusters. So I mean, I was always into that kind of stuff. But I had my avenue into the Universal Monsters was actually through the Phantom of the Opera, but not the Lon Chaney one, the Claude Rains one.
Okay.
I got really into that. I know it's not as beloved, but I still really like it. But it's got cool stuff, but it's not the best version of the story for sure. But
I feel like that is included in the box set. Because they're we need to get 8 movies. We can't do 7, we need 8.
Yeah, exactly. And it has a pseudo sequel with Boris Karloff that I can't remember the title. That climax, yeah. Which, I mean, kind of, it has opera in it, it's in color. That's about all that's this, and there's a Phantom-esque character, but not whatever. Anyway, that movie exists. So I had when I was 6 years old, I had a Phantom of the Opera Christmas, and I got that VHS of the Claude Rains one. And the beginning of that particular VHS had this promo for all the Universal Monster movies. That you can find these on YouTube really easily. It has like Dracula talking and everything. And at the end of it, there was just like this list of all the movies in the thing with that like 1980s, or late 80s, early 90s collect 'em all voice talking. And so that's kind of what got me hooked. And then I just started like, I had already like been aware of these movies existing, but then that was like when I started to seek them out and started like buying my own movies and stuff. Like I got the Wolfman pretty early on. And so like that was kind of like how I became a monster kid, but really made me like a Universal Monster lover for life was this late 90s Brendan Fraser movie. But not that movie. It was Gods and Monsters. And so the better Brendan Fraser Universal Monster yes, the good one.
Well, the Mummy's Mummy's good.
It's fine for what it is. I was always disappointed in the fact that it's not really a horror film. I don't know what's wrong with me about that. I should have just accepted it, but yeah. But anyway, Gods and Monsters was really what made me start to rethink James Whale and movies, and like those movies in general. So I started looking at it in a different light. I started like getting the DVDs and listening to the commentaries, started doing the scholarship. When I was in college, I got this book by Tom Weaver and the I guess it's Brunas brothers, called Universal Horrors. And it was like the first time I found a book that was about these movies in kind of like a scholarly manner. And that's kind of how I got into it. Bride Frankenstein ended up becoming one of my favorite movies. It's on my Letterboxd top 4. And then so when it came to this movie, this is the one that I have seen more than Son of Frankenstein for some reason. But this one we had at the video store that I worked at. And I didn't own this one when I was growing up until I bought that like 8 DVD or that 8 movie DVD set that like you guys are going through. And like I first watched this at some point in high school, not really remembering much about it, but then I would just be out and about looking for Universal Monster stuff. And that's a thing I've been doing since I was a kid, just looking at, I remember at one point I was 11 years old holding up the Universal Monster Pogs in a gas station, thinking about buying them. I was like, I don't have Pogs, I don't need to do this, and did not buy them. But like just to let people know, like there was this early resurgence in the 90s, like in the early 90s of the Universal Monsters, where they just put it on everything.
They're on stamps.
They're on stamps, yeah. Like you can, if you were to go into eBay right now and just type in like Universal Monsters advertising, you'll find all these weird things like Doritos did a thing, Pepsi did stuff. It was just like a thing in the early 90s. And then when The Mummy came back in Gods and Monsters, it kind of had another resurgence in the late 90s. And so
it feels like it was the last time they were really like a bigger part of the culture.
Yeah, totally.
Like, I grew up with them in the 80s when they were on like every Saturday afternoon. You could watch a Universal Monster movie, and there were like records and books. But then in the 90s, you're right, they kind of got, stamped onto everything, like they could sell products.
Yeah, which is weird, but cool at the same time.
I got a couple of the postage stamps as well that came out, around that time. So
I had them, but I don't know where they are. So
I don't either. And I have that same book you held up. I think it's in the living room because I'm using it for research stuff. But
so that's what I read to get ready for this. And there's I found, so this movie kind of fell off my radar for a bit because it is sort of just it's kind of like a placeholder Frankenstein. But then I was out and about and I found one of those Castle Films 8mm things from like I get the late 60s, early 70s or something, back when there was a monster resurgence from the 60s. And it was an 8mm digest of this called The Trial of Frankenstein, and I was confused as what this was. And so that kind of prompted me to look at it again. And then about 5 years ago, when it looked like we were going to have the Dark Universe, on Dead Letter, I made this like little let's go through the Universal Monsters universe thing. And that was when I rewatched it, Ghost of Frankenstein again. And rewatching it again this time, I was like, this is kind of pleasant. It's kind of fun. It doesn't do anything super special, but it's interesting to see it in the big canon of both Universal Monsters and Universal horror in general.
Yeah. I think what strikes me watching it and then watching the Universal Monster movies as a whole, especially in the 1940s, even though when we talk about the 1940s movies, we're going to say how they kind of are more kid stuff. Like they're
Yeah.
definitely not the A pictures that they were in like the early to mid 30s. There still is an effort to connect everything. Like they're not lazy, and the writers aren't lazy, and the writers aren't slapdash. Like they are looking at the previous movies, and they are at least making some efforts to connect everything in a way that like treats the audience not as stupid. Which I was not really expecting, to be quite honest, like based on it being so long since I had watched these movies and what my expectations were.
And also they didn't have home video back then, so they didn't really have the onus to have that kind of continuity.
Right. There was no expectation that some nerdlinger was going to go up to them or post online, here are all the continuity errors. How could you do this? Right.
Yeah. I mean, some of the things that are different. I mean, the design is different of the castle at the beginning, for example, but it doesn't really matter. You get the idea. Oh, it's Frankenstein Castle. So, hey, whatever. It's weird because I've just done the last 4 or 5 Hammer movies, and I was kind of expecting a continuity because of I hadn't seen them all before. So I was sort of expecting a continuity because of the Universal movies, and there is not one at all in those. It's basically like you're dropped into these different episodes in the life of the Baron Frankenstein, and there's no attempt to say, hey, this is coming straight out of the last movie, except between the first and the second. Otherwise, it's like an episodic television show, Monster of the Week even. It's very it's a different kind of thing. So,
and those are mostly, it's like almost always Peter Cushing, right?
Yeah. The only one that's not is Ralph Bates in The Horror of Frankenstein, which is actually not technically part of the series because it's a remake of The Curse of Frankenstein.
Oh, okay.
So, they were going to reboot the series with that, and it didn't work.
I need to go in. I think I've only watched The Horror of Frankenstein and The Curse. I think I've watched The Curse of Frankenstein and then whatever the follow-up was. I need to go back and I need to rewatch I need to watch all the Hammer Frankenstein ones. And Lee was only the monster in the first one. And then it's okay.
Yeah.
And then he was like, I'm not doing this makeup.
And that draws a different a kind of continuity though between these movies, which are very monster. The monster is the continuity in these, where in Hammer, Dr. Frankenstein is the continuity, and it's Cushing all the way through.
And Cushing is the monster. I mean, Cushing is the real
monster.
villain.
Absolutely, yeah. He is a real mustache twirling kind of villain in a lot of those movies. There's a couple of them where he's kind of empathetic, but not very often. So
there's that like adage about how the difference between wisdom and knowledge is like knowledge is knowing that Frankenstein is the guy and not the monster, but wisdom is knowing that Frankenstein is the monster.
Is the monster.
Yeah.
I feel like the Hammer Frankensteins need to get added to the wheel for 2025, Brian.
Okay, I'd be down for it, but I need a break because
2025.
I spent 2 months writing about that. It just took me forever to write about those second 4.
We're not here to work you into the ground.
How many of those are there? I mean, how many Hammer ones are there?
Well, okay, so there are. I guess
just Peter Cushing, maybe. Yeah,
there are 7 total, but I took out The Horror of Frankenstein. I'm going to move it into a different article because it's a kind of a standalone thing. So, and it's kind of a parody. It's sort of a comedy.
Okay. Yeah.
So, excellent.
Yeah. So it's a different kind of thing.
We'll give you a breather. I'm thinking next year, 2025.
I'm down for. I'll be ready. I'll be ready for it by then. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I think I've been convinced not to do the idea I had after walking out of Godzilla -1. I'm like, what if we just did Godzilla movies in 2025 and everybody rebelled? They're like, no, that's terrible.
That's like 30 movies or something.
Yes, they're like, we will
do the Showa era, take a break, come back and do another era.
What if we just did a year on the Matthew Broderick Godzilla? Just that. Just 52 episodes on everything. On that.
I think there's a podcast series called like I've never listened to this. I just know it exists, called the Frankenstein Minute, where they just analyze a minute of a Frankenstein movie. I mean, you could do that with Godzilla.
Well, stay tuned for something I'm doing this year with a different podcaster on a different horror movie that will be we've already recorded a few episodes, and 74 seconds at a time for a movie that came out in 1974.
Really? I can guess what it probably is.
I got to guess
tools.
Too.
So really excited, but and I'm really thrilled for that to come out. But let's not talk about that right now. Let's talk about background.
We digress.
Shocking.
That may happen in this one.
Shocking. So I've just got a few production notes this time around. Not quite as many as we did for the original trio of films here, but Universal obviously wants to follow up on the success of the original Frankenstein movies featuring Karloff as a monster, but it's a solid 2.5 years. Like, it's November of 1941 before they announce plans to move forward with another movie. And Brian, Andrew, I know you guys are like scholars of the Universal horror movies. Is there any reason why there is such a gap? I know they're making, like Claude Rains does, Phantom of the Opera. There's the Wolfman. So they still are making monster movies. Why the wait after Son of Frankenstein?
I think part of it was Karloff was in Arsenic and Old Lace and couldn't come back to be the monster. I think that's part of it, but I don't think that's the only thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I was under the impression that he was like, with Son of Frankenstein, this is it. I'm not doing this again.
Yeah, but he got to use arsenic as an excuse, I think.
Yeah. Which I don't blame him. And also Karloff was I think it's 1941. He actually, his contract with Universal expires.
Yeah.
And he goes and works for Columbia, and he makes some movies with them. The Black Room is a good one. And the other ones, there are like 4 more. And I've seen them all. They're okay. He's kind of playing the same character in them all, unfortunately. And he was sort of getting burnt out on that sort of thing. But then Val Lewton came calling. Broadway came calling. And so he's actually like stretching himself as an actor by the time Ghost of Frankenstein's coming around. And he's like, no thanks. I've got some other things going.
Right. Because by the time Ghost of Frankenstein is greenlit, like, he's in his 50s by now. Like, he's not a young man. Like, he
was 44 when he played the Frankenstein monster the first time, I believe. Yeah,
he was like early to mid 40s for sure.
Yeah,
so he's tired of sitting up in the makeup chair for hours at a time. And we had talked about this. Like, he had already stated, like, he's taken the monster as far as he felt he could go with it, in terms of like, this is as far as of a character I can make it. And he was kind of afraid that the monster was going to become what Lugosi originally felt the monster would be, which was just be like this lumbering, hulking creature that would grunt and growl. Like, that is what Karloff said. That's kind of all that's really left for the monster to do. So that's bowed out.
Sort of what he's starting to become in Son of Frankenstein, I think. I don't think Son of Frankenstein gave him a lot to sink his teeth into.
No, you have those 2 scenes we talked about.
Yeah.
But you're right. For the most part, he's not in it that much.
Right. He's laying on a table most of that movie.
Yeah, it's really the Lugosi show and Basil Rathbone. It's really their movie. Like, you had said, Brian, that although he's like second build behind Rathbone, you could have made him third build. I mean, you could have made him fourth build behind Lionel Atwill.
Yeah.
And Inspector Klug, who is awesome. I mean,
awesome,
let's face it. He's the best.
I actually kind of want to do a comparison, because like, I wonder if Peter Boyle as the monster in Young Frankenstein has more screen time than Boris Karloff does in Son of Frankenstein.
He might.
I think so. I think he does. Yeah. Because and it's not that he's not on screen. It's just that he's not doing anything for so much of it. He's laying down, he's on the table, he's getting x-rays, he's, things like that.
Yeah.
You mentioned Andrew, like Arsenic and Old Lace, which Karloff would play on film, but he also revives this character on Broadway, correct? And Karloff would go on to have like a pretty successful stage career, and he would also be really successful in the early days of television with live performance, especially when you were doing like basically live stage performances for television as well, right?
He was a very reliable actor, and people would call upon him because, and you think about, some of these Universal's biggest actors around this era. You've got Lugosi, who unfortunately, he was a morphine addict. He was, money was slipping through his fingers. He would take jobs just to take jobs anywhere he could. He wasn't very reliable. People had to feed him his lines sometimes, things like that. He was a struggle for people to work with. And so that he could be a diva and things like that. Yeah. And this is not anything against I love Bela Lugosi. I'm not trying to badmouth, but this is just facts of his life. And it's unfortunate, but it's true. And then you look at, who we're going to talk about more today, Lon Chaney Jr. Had problems of his own. Karloff was just sort of reliable. He was just a rock. He would come in, he'd be prepared, he'd do his thing, he'd go home to his private life, and that was it. He didn't make any trouble, and I think that's why he worked all the way until he died in 1969. I mean, he made, after Targets in 1968, he makes
five more movies.
He makes 5 more movies in Mexico, and then he gets home and he dies. I mean, that's pretty much how it. And so he was a workhorse, and he was just constantly working television, radio. Vincent Price was kind of the same way. So was Christopher Lee. They were all just sort of working constantly because they were just reliable people. So that's I think was a benefit.
Vincent Price is like who I kind of think of. Like Vincent Price was definitely doing the Karloff way of being a horror actor.
He was.
Yeah.
He didn't mind being typecast. He was like, okay, well, this is what I do and people love it, so why not?
And it's
still working.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's not working for the sake of, it's not because like we need the money, we're in dire straits. Like Karloff is pretty well off by this time. Like his future is secured. It's just like the love of the craft and the love for like doing it at this point. So he just enjoyed working. And there are stories of like Karloff, like later in his, like very late in his career. I think he did an appearance with Vincent Price on, I want to say it's the Red Skeleton Variety Hour. I could be wrong about the comedian, but it's
they're in a couple things together. Like
they were in some of Corman's. They were in The Raven, the Corman movie. They were in the House of Long Shadows. Was that? No, that was Cushing, Lee, and Price and Carradine. Sorry, wrong one.
But there's like a well, The Raven's funny, but there's like another comedy one that they're in that I don't. It's a Corman movie, but I don't think it's a Poe movie.
It's I know what one. The Terror.
Yeah. Well, yeah, The Terror. Oh yeah. But that one's
and there's
kind of
one
Poe
of them
adjacent.
that they the Terror is one where they basically use cut scenes from The Raven, right? And then they just filmed more around it.
Well,
that's that's an episode unto itself, frankly, because there were like 5 different directors on that movie, including Francis Coppola, Jack Nicholson, Monty Hellman. Like Corman just threw everybody at it to try and finish this movie. Right. Then ultimately he said, and they finished it, but then ultimately he said, we have all this footage left over. Peter Bogdanovich, what can you do with it? And then he made a masterpiece with Targets. So, which is still, I mean, it's hard for me to pick, but I think that, and that's in my top 3 Karloff performances.
Right.
So
it's that, Body Snatchers, and Bride of Frankenstein, I take it.
Yeah. I think I prefer, I just sort of collectively say his performance is the monster, but I think I like his performance in the first one the best.
Got it.
And he's great in all 3. I mean, as little as he has to do in Son. Yeah, I love him in Bride too, but man, I think something about the mute monster in the first movie is just so powerful to me.
Yeah.
Well, he does cool silent stuff in Son of Frankenstein too. Like like that mirror sequence is like yeah.
I was thinking of the show with Red Skeleton in Price where he's very ill. He's like basically in a wheelchair when he's not on stage. He's using a oxygen tank, and when he's on stage, he's able to like throw it off, do a song and dance number, perform marvelously, and then kind of go back to his chair and get assistance at that point. But like when the camera was on him, you would not know anything, like he was suffering from any ill health effects whatsoever. Right. Like he was just on, like he was just that kind of performer. So
those are the stories
Karloff
was just that like he just bounded out of the chair when it was time to go on.
So Karloff bows out, needless to say. We'll talk about his replacement here, probably not quite as effusively, but we know we do have kind words for.
I have nice things to say.
But coming off the success of producing and directing The Wolfman, George Wagner is tapped to produce Ghost of Frankenstein. Eric C. Kenton is going to direct, and he is going to go on to direct the House of movies, House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula. So that's going to be kind of interesting to see what he'll bring. He's kind of like a lot of directing credits. He's kind of a workman-like director, like pretty easy to work with. Probably would have done... Yeah, he probably would have done like the Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, but he had a falling out with Lou Costello, which I think when we talk about Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, like that will be a running theme, like somebody having a falling out with like Lou Costello.
I was wondering why he didn't do Abbott and Costello and the Keystone Cops movie.
Yeah, I think there was...
that must have been the reason why, because he did a lot of Keystone Cop movies, I think. So,
So he's coming on board, but and you're going to see like there's 4 persons coming off of the Wolfman that are, as well as George Wagner, that are becoming on board with Ghost of Frankenstein. So they're kind of like just moving. It's kind of like a production line, like just moving right on to the next Universal horror. And you kind of like, they don't know that they're creating in the Wolfman this like classic film that person we're still going to be talking about this movie, like 90, 80 years later. We're still talking about the Wolfman. Like I absolutely love that. That's probably one of my 3 favorite Universal monster movies. And in no small part to the performance of the man who's going to be putting on the flap top and the black boots, Mr. Lon Chaney Jr., who's stepping in to play the role of the monster. And he is going to play 4 iconic monsters in Universal canon. Plays the Wolfman, obviously. He'll play Frankenstein's monster here. He'll play the Mummy in one of the sequels. And he also plays Dracula in Son of Dracula in 1943. What can we say about Lon Chaney Jr.? It's very troubled. Like he's someone that had a lot of personal demons. He suffered from alcoholism, and it feels like he's someone who lived in the shadows, shadows of his father, the man of 1,000 faces, Lon Chaney Sr., but also lived in the shadow of both Lugosi and Karloff and the prestige that they earned from like their performances in the early Universal movies.
Yeah, I think he's really being groomed to take their place. He's supposed to be the new Lon Chaney, Karloff, Lugosi, and he's just
well, he's not really named Lon Chaney Jr. He's Creighton Chaney, isn't he?
Creighton Chaney, and I don't think Chaney was necessarily even their last name, as I recall. It's been a while since I've read that up on that. But I'm not sure that Chaney is quite up to that task. Yeah. I'm sorry to say it because I really do like him as an actor. I think he's great in The Wolfman. I think he really knows how to play Larry Talbot. He gets that one.
He's good as Lenny.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. He is terrific as Lenny in Of Mice and Men in 1939. And I think that it's one of those things where, and I also love his last great performance, which is in Spider Baby.
Spider Baby, yeah,
which is so good. It's sort of like his targets, if you will, and
yeah, kind of, yeah.
It's his swan song there, and but I think he was sort of forced into these other roles, and he just wasn't quite capturing what made Karloff's performance so special, and I don't think anyone ever really did after Karloff. So, and I like Lugosi to some extent. I like Glenn Strange in the role fine and everything, but there's, I just watch his performance in this and I'm like, he like hardly ever changes the expression on his face.
Yeah.
It's so stiff. It's like a caricature of what Karloff was doing instead of really embodying that, the empathy, especially in the scenes with the little girl. I think that is a sort of lost opportunity, in my opinion. So
yeah,
Chaney plays the role of the monster like a guy that is woken up at 2 a.m. in a strange home that has to use the bathroom and is like stumbling around in the dark trying to find his way to the bathroom.
Yeah,
like that is kind of like eyes closed. Yeah,
but that kind of becomes the well, I guess this and meets the Wolfman that kind of solidifies the, if you're going to go walk like Frankenstein,
you're going to stretch out your arms and walk with stiff legs. Yeah.
Yeah. You're doing this, what originates here, but really becomes a thing in the next movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, Chaney is an interesting guy. It makes sense if you think about the pedigree that he would be good at a pantomime performance, which this, it's a more or less, he doesn't really have dialogue until the end, and even then that's not his voice. Yeah. Which, God, how cool, or how not cool, how funny would it have been if he tried to do that like stereotypical Bela Lugosi accent that we all tried to do. But anyway, like he's like, you would hope that he would have some of that from his dad to like be able to do that thing, but it just does not happen. And there's reasons for that, I'm sure, but like you feel like somewhere on paper, people are like, oh yeah, he's Lon Chaney's kid, he can handle this, and he's not bad, but he's definitely doesn't have the like pathos that Karloff does. Yeah.
Well, you look at those old Lon Chaney Sr. movies, and he was a remarkable pantomime actor. I mean, and it's a shame that he couldn't transition. He died before sound really took over because he had such a great voice too. And
he only had that one movie.
Yeah, he did, the remake of The Unholy Three. Yeah. But it's so it's kind of tragic, and I just don't see the charisma that he had, and sort of the connection, the it factor that it doesn't seem to have been passed on so much to his son. And again, I sound like I'm being so mean to poor Lon Chaney Jr. because
I don't know, because I feel like we said, he has it in the Wolfman. I feel like when he's
it was really good as Larry Talbot,
especially like even early in the movie, like pre-Wolf Bite, when he's just like coming back to his Claude Rains and his father's estate, and he is kind of like, oogling, like he's kind of like taking 2 women to the fair, and he's kind of being like the dashing playboy. He fills the suit, and he has that kind of swagger about him, and he does have a certain charisma, but it's really like after, and Kurt Sinemak like invented like the myth of the werewolf whole cloth. Like, there's not like with Dracula, there's like the vampire mythos had been pretty well established. I know like Stoker had taken some things, but there was like a lot that was already there, where Sinemak is really inventing a lot of things whole cloth when it came to like werewolves. Chaney's able to really give that a lot of pathos and make him very sympathetic. Like you really felt for what Larry Talbot is going through, especially in the Wolfman. And I wonder if a good chunk of that sympathy comes from Chaney's own personal demons and his own personal struggles as well. It feels like that's coming out on these, really sweating that out on the screen.
Yeah. If you ever want to see what alcoholism does to somebody, like watch The Wolfman and then watch High Noon. Because he looks like, I think that those movies are only about like 10 years apart, but he looks like he's aged 30.
Yeah. He's puffy. Yeah. He's craggy.
I thought the same thing watching this movie, because Dwight Fry has a very small part at the beginning of this movie, and he looks like, this is 10 years after Dracula, and he looks like he's aged 100 years in that time. I mean, he looks like, and to be reduced from Fritz and Renfield and Carl to random villager is just like, that's so sad to me, because Dwight Fry is one of my actors who every time I see him in a movie, I'm like, oh, it's Dwight Fry.
It's Dwight Fry.
Yeah.
I have a headcanon for those villagers. Like I am convinced they are descendants of Carl from Bride of Frankenstein. Because
all of them?
He plays at least two ones. I mean, and I kind of get the feeling that the villager in this one is the same villager later, because there's not that much of a time difference, but maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, like Karloff and Marilyn Harris in Frankenstein, Chaney would develop a bond with like the young girl he worked with here. He would like put her on her knee. He would buy her ice cream in between takes. Like, he was really kind with her. She described having like a great working relationship with him, said like nobody on set was nicer to her than Lon Chaney Jr. was. He even in 1946 apparently offered to adopt her after her mother passed away, which her surviving father objected to. And I couldn't find a lot on that. Like, that seemed like a very odd thing to offer to do when you still have a parent, but what do I know? Chaney would play the monster again in a live television production of Frankenstein, like in the early days of TV, and it didn't go well. I believe he probably was inebriated when he was doing this, and rumor had it that he thought it was like a dress rehearsal and that it wasn't. So when he was supposed to be smashing furniture, he would like pick up like chairs over his head and then like very gently set them back down and like set them back in place. Didn't go well. Hated the makeup. Hated the makeup. Would complain about it on set, would complain about Jack Pierce. At one point was so upset with like the rubber head that he like ripped it off his head in a fit of anger, and it opened like a massive gash on his head. So they had to like shut down filming, have allergic reactions.
Yeah, I heard about the allergic reaction, but I didn't know he cut himself too.
Yeah. So, we'll talk about his performance as the monster, but like, my God.
Wow.
Also coming back, Bela Lugosi is Ygor. We'll definitely talk about some changes in this performance. And Brian, had things gone any better for Lugosi in the 2.5 years between Ghost and Son, or was he still just making poverty role films?
Yeah, we're on the downward slide with Lugosi. This is 1942. A couple years later, he would be, appear in his last big film, which was The Body Snatcher, and then he kind of went into the wilderness for a while. And there's a new book that's out that it's sort of like the lost years of Bela Lugosi. Apparently, he would do like a lot of private parties and stuff. He would show up on stage. He'd play Dracula as often as he could in whatever production he could play. And I'm really interested in reading this book. I haven't had a chance to do it yet, because these have always been considered kind of the lost years between 1945 and when he started showing up in Ed Wood films. But it sounds like he was just working, doing anything he could. I mean, he'd like show up at kids' birthday parties, whatever he could get paid for. So I know. I mean, this is.
I'm thinking of him like doing balloon animals, which is Like, whenever someone mentions kids' parties, the first thing I think of.
Yeah.
It's like, look, it is a wolf. Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I mean, his movie career, again, still Poverty Row. I mean, it's very strange films. There's one, I think it's The Bat. That's nifty. So there's all kinds of things that he's kind of doing just to scrape by. And again, the Ed Wood movies sort of, as they're cult movies now, but they were just considered bad movies at the time.
Right.
And so he was sort of like scraping the bottom of the barrel by appearing in these movies. But yeah, so, and also his addictions, and his marriage broke up, and just no wonder, whenever asked about when Boris Karloff was asked about Bela Lugosi, he'd just say poor Bela, because he just lived a tough life.
The first edition of that Universal Horror book that you and I both have, like the one you and I have probably doesn't say this, but the first edition would say just that, and to Bela, poor Bela.
Yeah.
This is a depressing episode, folks. This is
for a movie that's kind of like an action crowd pleaser.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what was pleasing was the score by Hans J. Salter.
Okay, is this not the score from The Wolfman? Because I feel like it's the score from The Wolfman. Not the main theme, but the other stuff.
I don't know.
Yeah. There's like a lot of Wolfman stuff in this, other than just Bellamy and anchors. But I mean, the opening credits is the background is the same thing from The Wolfman, like the forest and stuff. And so, like, I feel like it's the same. I feel like it has to be recycled. But people bring up how good the score is.
Which part? So you think the opening credits?
So the opening credits has the same imagery, but I think the song is different. But I think the incidental, like as we're going through the story stuff, is I feel like that's the same. Like not the main theme that you hear hammered to death in The Wolfman, but like the other like little like there'll be like a conversation between Claude Rains or something and Lon Chaney and The Wolfman that I feel like that gets borrowed. But I mean, it's a good score, but the whole time I kept thinking, is this the same? Is it? I don't know.
Because I don't think he's credited for the Wolfman score. I didn't see that in his bibliography, but hang on here.
Yeah, he's not the only one for the because I looked it up. I think it's him and a few other people. He may not be credited. In the opening credits, but I saw him listed on there.
You're not confusing the Wolfman with the strange death of Adolf Hitler, are you? People have made that.
Maybe I am.
Many times. No, but he does work on like a number of Universal horror movie. He does House of Frankenstein, Creature of the Black Lagoon, couple of Invisible Man movies. A couple other Invisible Man movies. Son of Dracula with Chaney, but no, I did not see the Wolfman when I was like doing some reading. And he does another movie just called Hitler. So, the guy liked Hitler movies for some reason. He was like, if you are doing something about, I'm not saying he was pro-Hitler, but I'm saying that if like Hitler was the subject, he would like, compose some music for it.
Yeah. Honestly, he was probably just assigned. It's like, hey, you did that last Hitler movie. Will you do this one too?
You're the Hitler
guy. Are you gonna pay me?
Right. I made a note here, like when I was watching this, the scene where Chaney is like reaching for the lightning, like when they're leaving the village and he's reaching for the lightning. Like I heard echoes of like Bill Conti's score. I think it's called Going the Distance in the Rocky movie. It's playing during the fight with Apollo Creed in the later rounds. It's like, it's my favorite piece of music from Rocky. I actually like it more than the main score. It's when Creed like knocks down Rocky and Mickey's like, stay down, just telling Rocky to stay down. And then Rocky gets up and breaks Apollo's ribs. And that part of the score, like I heard echoes of that here. And I was thinking like, Mickey tells Rocky, you're going to eat lightning and crap thunder. So, I thought that was a stretch too far, but
it was.
I did.
It's out there in the zeitgeist. It could have happened.
Yeah.
Definitely Ghost of Frankenstein was in the zeitgeist in the 1970s.
Well, Frankenstein in general is in the zeitgeist. Right. Like, Bill Conti, he's just watching, TV.
Even shades of like Han and Leah's like love theme in Empire Strikes Back. I heard a few notes of that seemed to like come from this. So definitely felt like a score that was, definitely heard by some folks and was pulled from. So
sure.
I really like that lightning scene always makes me I always refer to that as the Jason Lives part of Ghost of Frankenstein.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Especially because it's like right after that bitchin' graveyard that they walk through. Like when I think of a Halloween graveyard, that graveyard they walk through is the one I think of. And then he gets struck by lightning and has his like Jason Lives moment. And,
And Ygor repeats his line from Son of Frankenstein. Your father was Frankenstein. Your mother was the lightning. Like it was the first thing that he had never thought of it before. I think maybe it's not in the notes. It might be worth mentioning also Evelyn Ankers here because she's sort of looks like, as much as Lon Chaney Jr. is sort of being groomed to be the leading man of the Universal horror movies, she seems to be put in here as, the leading lady of these. So she's in Wolfman, Ghost of Frankenstein, Son of Dracula, The Invisible Man's Revenge, which is like my second favorite Invisible Man movie, believe it or not.
It is a good one, yeah.
It's pretty cool. So just
is she in Man-Made Monster
like
also?
I don't see it here, but
okay, maybe not then.
Yeah, she's in Hold That Ghost. I'm just kind of reading names here now.
Yeah,
but
A and C, yeah.
Weird Woman, The Mad Ghoul.
That's it. No, it was the Mad Ghoul. That's what I was thinking of.
The Mad Ghoul is. There we go.
So yeah, I mean, it's released in March of 42. Considered a success. It actually gets mostly positive reviews. Like it actually is considered pretty strong, like not quite as strong as the other Frankensteins, but does pretty well and gets decent reviews. So, they're going to return to that well. But let's talk about this movie a little bit. And I guess I want to ask, because this is a point in that Universal Horrors book that you have, like one of the things they discuss in there is the difference between like a horror movie and a monster movie. And I wanted to maybe start the discussion with that because like a horror, and they make a good point where like a horror movie, it discusses our own fears and it can get very nuanced and we can discuss, you get like very psychological and we can get into like our own inner turmoil and we can externalize these things. And that's what makes a really good horror movie work. Whereas like a monster movie is just like, here is a really cool creature design and it's running around smashing things, doing monster things. They're not really kind of getting into any sort of existential dread. And I'm wondering, where do you think Ghost falls here?
I kind of think it's a monster movie. There isn't really anything particularly scary that happens. The movie came out in the 40s. It's not, few things are going to be scary to me in that sense, but I don't see them attempting to be scary in this one as much as they're like, we have a monster, let's make a fun movie with a monster.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it's definitely farther on the spectrum. I mean, every now and then it like tries to talk about something that is a little bit interesting, but most of the time it's like, monster smash. But there's some interesting things here and there in this that I really kind of dig. Particularly when it comes to the story with the little girl. I think that is it's sort of an extension of the Maria thing from the first movie, all the way that goes just all the way through the movie. So, and she doesn't die, spoiler alert, but which is too bad, right, Mike?
You know, we get accused of being pro dead children in movies quite a lot, and that's my fault.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
So, yeah, I feel like now and again this movie like tiptoes up to making like an interesting point.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it does that accidentally. Like the idea of the monster like carrying the young girl in and suggesting on its own, like, put her brain in my body because it feels like it has a connection with her. Like, that's a fairly interesting point for a movie to make in like 1942. Like,
that's my favorite scene in the movie. I think that's where it works the best for me. And you know, where she just, and even their first encounter where, you know, the other kids run away and she just kind of, you know, grabs his hand. Are you a giant? You know, sort of a lot of it is that's one of the things with this movie is it's a lot of like just rehashing of other things from other movies. So it is a lot of the Maria thing and the thing from with Peter in the previous movie.
Yeah. He's
sort
a
of
friendly
meshed
giant
together. Yeah. And, you know, the walk on the roof and get my balloon, you know? But
the other thing I found fascinating, and we'll maybe talk a little more, I'll save it for a little bit, but Bomer's suggesting that you can't murder the creature, you can't dissect the creature, that would be murder. And I'll save that for a little bit. But I feel like every now and then it stumbles upon like these larger ethical questions that are kind of fascinating. And I don't necessarily think that it's doing that on purpose. I think that it almost like stumbles upon that because it never really explores it with any sort of depth at all. Right. Whereas like maybe like Hammer would have, like 20 years later, a Hammer movie would have done that a little bit, where these were churning them out. And I'm wondering, because this movie comes out in 1942, and by this time, you know, we're now actively engaged in World War II. So a great number of young American men are shipped overseas. They're in the Pacific, they're in Europe, they're fighting. So a large part of your audience is gone, like they're engaged in warfare. Do you feel like this movie and a couple that follow, do you think they're specifically designed for children? Do you think that these that Universal is saying our audience are going to be like kids that are going to be 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old?
I think that double feature that made Son of Frankenstein be a thing, I think that like a lot of kids probably went to that. And so that's probably when they started doing, and Maria being such a big fixture of that kind of makes, and you know, Peter, whose acting is not the best, but I mean, like,
I love Peter.
But I mean, like, but Peter's legit. I mean, that's how a kid would act. I mean, like, I'll give him that. And so I think, that's when they kind of start to see that. And then especially with the later movies, when they start doing the Monster Mash thing, that definitely has more of a kiddie fair thing to it than like a I don't know, a pathos ridden horror film, if you an elevated horror, if you want to use that derided term. But I'm kind of, this is where they start becoming, you know, Saturday morning fare, which is not a bad thing. I mean, I think there's a good thing for that too. And you can have ethical things or ethical questions in a monster movie too. I mean, that's what the Iron Giant is, I guess. Like,
Yeah, I'm with you. This is, to me, I think this is absolutely directed towards children and saying, you know, and it really does carry through all the way to Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, that this is supposed to be something that will appeal to, you know, the widest audience we possibly can. And, you know, because, you know, we just, that's just, there's not like a demographic target necessarily, but it's like, okay, so let's give ourselves, let's make sure that we can get the little kids all the way up to their moms won't hate taking them to this, you know, too, I suppose. But I don't know who knows? Maybe I get the idea that in the 40s and 50s, it was like, okay, Sonny, go on to the movies, you know, leave me alone for a while. I hear stories like that from, you know, like Joe Dante and things like that, tell stories like that all the time. So that may well have been the case. You know, it's like somewhere for the kids to be, so that, you know.
What do we make of Chaney's performance as the mom? We kind of hinted at it, but let's maybe dig into it a little bit here. I feel like we kind of hinted around it a little bit here, but digging into it, I think the biggest thing that stands out is not only is the monster unable to speak in this one, but he's completely mute. Like when Chaney is performing as the monster, he doesn't make any sounds whatsoever. And it's odd and kind of disconcerting. Like he's completely mute and kind of led around. And he's not quite at the place that he's going to be in another movie or two where the monster is really just like a glorified, like hired goon. But we are quickly approaching that here, right?
I don't think it's a bad performance I mean, because like I said, there ends up being something kind of accidentally iconic out of it. That this is, when we ape Frankenstein, we tend to go off of this and Lugosi's performance in the next movie. But it works for what it is, but it does for what this movie is. I think he has a pretty good performance with the little girl when they have those scenes together. But other than that, it's just like, this did not need to be Lon Chaney Jr. necessarily. It could have been, I mean, I don't know if Glenn Strange was already doing stunt work then, but I mean, like, so.
Well, one of the things I feel like he was cast was like, hey, here's a big guy, who we have under contract, and let's capitalize on the fact that he was the Wolfman, and he fits the suit, so go, that's kind of what it feels like. That like there wasn't a lot of thought put into it necessarily. Will he work as this character?
No,
and he does okay. I mean, it's just kind of this is, I think, my feeling of the movie as a whole. It's just kind of uninspired. It's just sort of lackluster. Even like the lighting is so different from the other movies. It's very flat. It's very flat lighting. It's just, there's no shadows and harsh angles, and there's none of that stuff. Those qualities, the expressionist qualities and things like that make the first three kind of special as far as their look goes. They kind of bring that back in the next one, but and in like the design of the lab equipment is so boxy and boring. I mean, there's just not much to it that visually draws the eye, and I think that kind of also lends itself to the performances. They're competent, but they're not special, I guess.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel about this movie as a whole. I mean, it's entertaining escapism for 68 minutes, but there's not much else that makes me go, oh yeah, let's I gotta watch Ghost of Frankenstein again right this second, because
physically Chaney definitely fills the part. You mentioned,
he does. Like Karloff was too small.
230. Yeah, you mentioned how like Karloff was cadaverous, like especially in that first movie, because Karloff was like, face it, like dirt poor and not eating, like how thin he was and how they had to really like bulk him up for a lot of it. And Chaney is built like a linebacker. He's 6'3", 230 pounds. He's about 280 once he's under all the makeup and costume.
Yeah.
So he looks monstrous. The problem is like Karloff was able to give not an athletic performance, but there's like a sense of menace, and there's a sense of like he could move, right? And he could actually physically move in that role, despite the back problems, despite the advanced age. You almost want to yell, like Chaney has this one thing he does where he like those old action figures you would get where you would like twist the body and then let it go and it would like let unwind like a karate chop type of deal. Yeah. Like it's almost like this slow backhanded chop that it would do. Like everything is slow. Everything is like laborious with it. It's kind of all of that kinetic movement that made Frankenstein like visually exciting is gone here. And it's a slog. And it kind of like, I made a note, like this is the shortest of all the movies. This is only like 67 minutes long. And it feels much, much longer.
And it's weird because they even kind of pad it out with this backstory sequence where they just flashbacks of the previous movies. And
a creative previously on, if you will. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But not done in an artistic way like in Bride, where they sort of recap the first movie and the first, they do it so, speedily and efficiently and effectively. Here it's just sort of like, oh, let's show clips from the first three movies.
I fell asleep twice, like rewatching it for the show, like because on Thursday I called out from work because I just wasn't feeling my best, and I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna rewatch this afternoon, get a little jump, and I'm on the couch, and twice, like I fell asleep during this movie for a couple minutes because it's just like it's a bit of a slog to get through, and there are fun bits to it. I mean, I'm not saying this is terrible. One thing I do appreciate for a lot of the flaws of the film, I do appreciate the attempts at continuity with Son of Frankenstein. Like, and this is something I think there's like a really interesting movie, and I would love if Del Toro's Frankenstein does really well and they make a follow-up to it. I would love if they go this route where the village is in dire straits. Like, no one is visiting anymore. There's no food. Everybody is in financial peril. Everybody is ruined at this point. And all that's happened is like tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. Like that, it to me is a really fascinating thing to follow. Like, I love the first couple minutes. So I love that they're referencing plot points from Son of Frankenstein. But it's like, no, Ygor's body's been riddled with bullets and the monster is in the sulfur pit. Like, they're following the trajectory of what had happened before.
I just realized that that's exactly what Springwood is like in Freddy's Dead.
Yeah, you're right.
It's
but just less Roseanne Barr in whatever they do next. So I wish they would have followed this more. But instead you get, well, go ahead and destroy the castle, I guess. And then they end up freeing the monster. Now, for all that continuity that I just praised, it is super weird that the monster's like fur-lined shirt disappears.
That shirt is so fun.
Well, one of the things that I noticed, though, watching this is when he's first brought out of the sulfur pit, he's wearing, like that, except it's like the fur has burned off of it.
Has it?
Yeah, and so
that would make sense.
Then so when he's first covered with all the crap, all the dust and stuff like that, it is like that poncho whatever shape thing that he had, and then it's not the open jacket,
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that there is that there, but when you see him, a scene later, or two scenes later again, he's clean and he's wearing his look from the first movie, and it's like, did they find a new suit? I don't know. Give him a bath, hose him down. Guy? Yeah, I think so.
Well, and they travel, right? They they leave the town of Frankenstein, apparently,
and they go seek out Frankenstein's other son,
brother,
which is just like, oh gosh, are you kidding me? I mean, I'm sorry. When I first hear that, it's like, okay, so let's shoehorn something into this plot. That's what that feels like. But
I don't remember. There's some explanation as to why Rathbone didn't do this. Maybe he was busy being Sherlock. I have no idea.
Sherlock Holmes, yeah.
I don't know, but there's, because apparently they intended it to be Basil Rathbone again, but then they didn't do that. So
he could not be bothered.
Yeah.
What do you make of my claim that this movie's a bit of a slog? Am I being too harsh here?
There's definitely some for a movie that's only 67 minutes long. It does definitely have some lulls. But it's got some fun highs. I like that walk through the graveyard. I like him getting hit by lightning. Yeah. Kettering's the sequence around Kettering's death is, interesting. Why? So you guys talk about, why do you have a kill switch? Why do you have that lever? Why do you have the poison gas stuff? Ludwig?
Yes.
What's up with that? So there's little things like that pull that get me into the movie. But yeah, there's just
so. I couldn't figure it out, like where the poison gas is, because he's a psychologist.
Yeah.
Correct?
Or
He's
like I guess a brain surgeon. He's a brain guy.
Okay.
He's like, yeah. Which
So he's a
is maybe back
psychiatrist
of
then
the
of some
was,
mind,
sort.
I think
He's
is
like,
what it says on his
yeah,
placard.
he says like,
yeah.
you know, the kind of people that I treat here, I think he says
Yeah.
at one point, which is like, hey, we are getting dangerously close to pathologizing.
Yeah.
Can't speak. You get what I'm saying about mental illness.
This guy definitely did some lobotomies.
Yes.
Is kind of the vibe that I get.
Uh-huh.
So he's like the forebearer to like Jeffrey Rush in House on Haunted Hill, basically.
Out there.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Is this poison gas in his own basement, or is it in like the asylum? Like
I don't know. I have no idea where his like office building is.
Is it both?
And his house, like, is it the same thing? Evelyn Anchors is just around a lot too. Like, is it the same place? Like,
why would you want poison gas in your house? Like, if your dinner party goes too long, like these guests won't leave. Guess I got to poison them.
I guess like I got maybe you heard about like Bedlam, and so like maybe that's why you have that like in the event of, or like there's a riot. Maybe, but even then I feel like I'm being generous there. So yeah,
it's a bit much.
Yeah.
What say you, Brian?
Oh well, okay. So I watched this in two pieces as well, because I was. And I started it yesterday afternoon and went, and I had to stop it to take my daughter somewhere, and I paused it and looked at the time and went, it's only halfway through. I was anyway. So I finished it this morning and was like, okay. I kind of like this movie less every time I see it. I'm sorry to say. But like we've all said, it really does have its moments. It's just as a whole, it doesn't hang together as well as the others in the series. And
it is fun. I put a note here, like, things might go better for the monster if he maybe just stopped randomly picking up little girls. You know, because it seems like nothing good ever comes when he's like, oh, there's a young girl, I'll just pick her up, because this just leads to bad things, right? And that's, listeners, that's life advice for you in general.
Yeah,
like, see a young girl on the street and you're tempted to just pick them up, don't. Nothing good will come of it.
I did back when mustache, like when Movember was a thing, where you like grow a mustache for November. Like one November I had a mustache and I was out in a grocery store, and this like kid fell down, and I was like, I can't help that kid. I look a certain part right now. I have to leave that kid in the aisle and go carry on with my life. Yeah.
That's great.
Yep.
The kid's just sitting there crying next to you, and you're like, just gonna get my Cheerios.
Sorry, kid.
Can't do it.
Yep.
Love it. So, I mean, yeah, Frankenstein carrying around Martha to help her get her balloon. That's kind of fun. Frankenstein like slapping a guy off a building, like that's kind of fun.
Yep.
Frankenstein in court, like Frankenstein Law
I know.
and Order. It's kind of like, it's ridiculous, but also fun. Like Frankenstein getting cross-examined is...
Well, and the fact that there's an 8mm...
Listeners can't see my face, but I'm just like, how? How?
Yeah. Well, the thing is, they caught on to that because, like, when they made that like 8mm digest, they focused on that particular part of this like trial of Frankenstein thing. So there's a lot of people out there. There's a bunch of boomers out there that this was how they learned about the Ghost of Frankenstein.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Brian's just really shaking his head.
I don't even know what to say.
Brian, do you think you have like a 10-part series on Ghost of Frankenstein?
No, I do not.
You think you could commission this with Manor Vellum?
No, I don't think so.
You sure? I think you do. Aim high.
So
you can do this.
I'll talk about it,
We'll talk off air.
6 minutes at a time. Okay, we'll break this into a 10-part series.
Lugosi is back, and Ygor is still a lot of fun to watch. but it's a different Ygor. Like, I think that a lot of there are moments where he's still really cunning and people still underestimate him, but he seems a bit neutered in this one, I think. And I'm not quite sure why that is.
I wonder if that's because it's they wanted to make a quickie, like they wanted like a quick because this is 67 minutes. The other one is like Son of Frankenstein. It's like 100 minutes. Like I wonder if that's part of it. Like he doesn't get the time to do more.
Yeah.
And maybe that's one of the issues in general. But even then, that would have just made the movie feel longer. So yeah, I don't know.
He just doesn't get, like, Son of Frankenstein. Lugosi is really having the time of his life, and he really is the highlight of that movie. It's my favorite Lugosi performance. Like, I prefer it to Dracula. Here, like you said, Brian, he's like kind of like playing the hits again, like he's saying like, you know, but it doesn't come off the same way.
Well, he doesn't really get like his opportunities to. There's no revenge story that was so compelling in the last one. He doesn't get to sort of use the monster as his instrument of, you know, retaliation or whatever. So that was kind of what made him kind of this fun villain in the previous movie, and he just doesn't get any of that. He kind of just says, "Oh, I'm going to take you to be healed," and then he essentially lays on a table. Again, he's sort of relegated to Karloff's role in the previous movie, and it's a shame.
And like speaking of, well,
you first, Andrew. No, you first, Andrew.
So, like thinking of Karloff now. Okay, I don't really buy into them having like an antagonistic relationship, like like Bela and Boris. But I do know that. Yeah, I don't buy into that. But as funny as that scene in Ed Wood is of that, but I do, however, know that, you know, Bela definitely was envious of Karloff's
there's no doubt.
career, and I think he probably got a little added joy that he got to do so much more as Ygor than Karloff got to do, and so he got like a little extra, like, oh yeah, you think he's awesome, I am also awesome. So he's kind of putting that energy out in Son of Frankenstein, but since it's just against Chaney, he doesn't have that extra subconscious, like, I don't know what else to, you know, energy to put out. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm reading into it too much.
Doesn't have the same guy to play off of. Doesn't have that same.
And like you mentioned in the last one, you know, Roland V. Lee, you know, sort of pushed for Lugosi to have a bigger part in Son of Frankenstein as well. So he didn't have that advocate in Earl C. Kenton, right? Is that his name?
Yeah.
And so, so I don't.
He directed Lugosi in Island of Lost Souls too, though. I mean, one famous cameo, but yeah,
it's a small role, but that's also one of his memorable ones. You know,
I mean, Devo is a band because of that. So.
That's right. That's right. I do love him in that movie. So yeah, that's a good point.
No, but I think there is something to what you're saying there about like having that, not adversary, but having that chance to say, and especially because he was supposed to play the monster originally as well, and saying like, okay, well, now I'm really going to bring my A game here. And also it was the first role he really got to play in 2 years. So it was a chance to really like show what he could do for the first time in 2 years. And Lee kept writing material for him to keep him on board for the whole shoot. So he had to bring if he stopped bringing his A game, Lee might have been like, okay, I think we have enough at this point. I think we're good. Yeah. So he kind of had to do that. Where here he's just kind of playing his role. He does have that one moment where he confronts Ludwig and you get a little bit of that menace again, which you see in the Burgermeister scene. But here, again, it just feels more subdued, where he blackmails Ludwig into creating or fixing the monster. But I think like Hardwick's performance as Ludwig is so kind of milquetoast that it doesn't really do much here. And to be honest, like, I don't really buy Ygor as like a blackmailer, because it's a guy that is like a dude with a broken neck that's been hung for stealing bodies. Like, who's going to listen to this guy? Right. Like, and he's going to say like his dad created Frankenstein's monster. It's like, yeah, we know, like that's kind of a pretty famous thing, like not his fault. Don't worry about it. Right.
He doesn't seem to have enough on him to pull off blackmail against him.
Okay. But here's my thought. Okay.
All right.
So we haven't talked about the titular ghost yet.
Oh.
Okay. So like before we were recording, I kind of feel like Curse of Frankenstein is a better title for this movie. If only because I don't think the ghost is actually a ghost. I think it's a ghost. Like when they wrote it, it's a ghost. It's supposed to be a ghost. But Colin Clive was dead. They didn't bother getting a different actor to play, so they had Hardwick play the ghost as well. And in my mind, that's not a ghost. That is his ego telling him he needs to do this. And so I think that, again, I might be being generous here. I think Ygor had already saw what he could do with Wolf. So it's not just that he could blackmail Wolf, but he also knew that he could kind of work the genetics. Like he is still a Frankenstein. And so I kind of feel like the titular ghost is just Frankenstein's ego being like, no, you got to do the science stuff. And I think Ygor plays into that. He's not really like, the blackmail is an easy thing for us as an audience to put in, but I think that that's also the thing that he's kind of getting at. Like, I was able to kind of convince Wolf to do this. I bet I could convince Ludwig. They're brothers. They got that in common. They'll want to do this anyway. So like that's kind of how I think how it sort of works, but maybe I'm being generous, but nonetheless.
I don't know, because Ludwig seems genuinely horrified at the prospect of doing this. Like he doesn't seem he seems genuinely like, please don't tell anybody that was my dad. Like he wants to distance himself from that, where like Basil Rathbone's Wolf is more about restoring honor to the family name. And really restoring his father's legacy. Ludwig seems to want nothing to do with that, is trying to protect his daughter from all of that in genuine, and then, leaves a diary out for her to find. So good call there.
Yeah. So like I think there is this, and this is the last movie with a Frankenstein in it, I think, like with an actual Frankenstein relative.
I think there's a daughter or a...
Oh, is there a daughter?
Or a niece.
I'm pretty sure that they're taking... that's right. Because they're in the next one, Maliva takes Talbot to Frankenstein to cure him, but he's dead, and it's the niece. Okay.
And so I kind of think that there's this Curse of Frankenstein where we just have to do the science. Like something compels the men of the Frankenstein men, at least from Heinrich on, to we have to do the thing. We have to do the mad science. Like
it's in the genes.
It's in the genes.
It's in the genes. It's
so I'm convinced that Hammer took a couple of their titles from this movie, because the Curse of Frankenstein is mentioned a couple of times, and then at one point, someone says Frankenstein must be destroyed, and so we have two of the titles there.
Yeah, there we go. So Lionel Atwill is back, our man Lionel.
And this is his second time being a mad scientist. Second time in the series, but because he's like the Mad Doctor of Market Street.
Yeah, Dr. X or
Dr. RX, Dr. Prescription. I can't totally remember.
He's in Dr. X and Mystery of the Wax Museum in 1932-33. And I think he sort of, he fit the bill for mad scientists there for a while.
So he was the Mad Doctor of Market Street as well, which was a Universal movie that came out the same year.
Yeah.
But he is in Dr. X too, like actual Dr. X.
So despite what we all talked about last week, it seems that Universal was like, we don't care, we're just going to keep him working. Is that how this worked out?
So his trial wasn't for a few years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, his trial was
because you said it was the Christmas party was what, 1941 or 1940?
But I think the trial's a little bit later than that. Yeah. Okay. So he'll be around for a couple more of these.
Yeah, they'd still have to buy out his contract, probably even if they wanted to get rid of him. So they might as well use him.
Yep. So we in our next episode, Andrew, and it hasn't been published yet, but we go all into Lionel Atwill's like orgy and stag parties and filming.
Yeah.
You look at this guy.
Turns out Babylon could have been an okay like riff off of him. Yeah.
But you look at Lionel Atwill, you're like, yeah, that's the guy hosting orgies. Like what? That does not seem like. Does not seem like the kind of guy. But
Fatty Arbuckle. I'm gonna put that out there too.
True. Yeah. So another issue I had is like Atwill and Hardwick almost seem indistinguishable at times. Like when I'm watching this, I'm like, I'm having trouble distinguishing like Bomer and Ludwig at points. And Bomer is the one that does raise the ethical question, like, can we shouldn't destroy the monster because like it would be murder. And I think that's an interesting ethical point. Like, even though it's an artificial creation, it is someone that has life, and it does demonstrate points where he is thinking for himself. Like he is saying like, look, it's on board with taking its brain out and it wants to put this child's brain in its head. So it's demonstrating some sort of logic or some sort of thought. So it feels like that would be murder, like whether or not, the creature should exist to begin with. Now that it is here, like we've argued for like 3 movies now, it's owed, and there's a responsibility that's owed to it to assist it in some way.
The deadbeat dad thing that Devon brought up, and then in the Bride episode, someone you're from
Igraine?
Igraine, yeah, thank you. I was worried. I was saying Ingrain. I'm like, that's not.
Oh, it's Igraine.
Igraine. Okay, yes. Yeah. Igraine said that the bride doesn't choose to be born either, and so like he doesn't. And whether or not this monster should exist, he didn't choose to exist. Right. That is the existential folly of man. In a lot of ways, we didn't make we didn't make these decisions, but we're here. So that's kind of I don't know. I guess So like I'm kind of with Bomer in that sense. But you also have the like vigilante justice concept of it all. Like this monster has murdered a bunch of people. Like you also have like that too to kind of talk about. We all make mistakes. But so it's like, I don't know, it's a surprisingly nuanced argument for a, place filler
but
Frankenstein movie.
Well, it says even here, the persons the monster kills, like on top of the stairs, for example, like he's getting confronted by people. Yeah. Like he's like there's a huge crowd around him and persons are like attacking him. Like in all honesty, it's kind of self-defense.
In this movie,
yeah. And he also thinks like even in a lot of the Frankenstein movies, like a lot of the acts of violence you can see as acts of self-defense. It's not really till like in Bride of Frankenstein, that's when you see him act like in a very murderous way.
Like, and some of those may have been Carl.
That's kind of my argument for most of them.
But when
honestly.
when he throws
at the beginning,
the woman
he
down
definitely kills.
Good point. Yeah. Well, he's running hot. He just he just
got burned down in a windmill. Yeah. So it's
it's like I'd be mad
too. What's Bomer's deal? Like, why is he so adamant about getting back at Ludwig here? Like, I couldn't quite get why.
Is it because he was disgraced as a physician or something like that?
What did he do?
They don't really say what he did.
Yeah.
It just sounds like an operation went bad or something.
Yeah. And it seems like Frankenstein's his only ally. And he's just like, I'm going to take this opportunity to prove that I'm still a good surgeon or whatever. I don't know. I don't know. It's very muddied.
The medical school that these brothers Frankenstein went to is
not good. Not a good school.
Yeah.
It is like I don't want to denigrate anybody's degree, so I won't say any, but it's just, it feels like a mail order, maybe you send in some stamps and you get like a degree and it's like, you're a doctor,
Got it out of a cereal box.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. I do like the end of this movie. It's all going haywire. You got poison gas. You got crazy ass villagers. You got Bela Lugosi's voice coming out of Lon Chaney's mouth.
Ygor will live forever.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Which, how do they determine that?
I gotta say, there's there's a subtlety in Chaney's performance here, because his face kind of gets that smile. He kind of gets the Lugosi look in his face there. You know, I see that in this.
Like I said, I really hope his original audio that they dubbed over was him doing a bad Lugosi accent.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
And you get the what good is immortality, or what good is like a good brain if you don't have eyes. So again, like really
way to be ableist.
Yeah. Way to be ableist, Bella.
Yeah.
So it's a crazy ass ending.
It really is.
With a Frankenstein dying, though, finally.
Yep.
Yeah.
Finally a doctor pays.
Yep.
Yeah.
The most milquetoast one, but
yeah. You know, the one who kind of like did the least damage in the end, you know, the one who's like kind of the least culpable in the end, like the monster just shows up on his doorstep. Like he didn't revive the monster out of his, you know, he's already revived, didn't create the monster, didn't send the monster out to do any dirty work or anything. And he just wants to bring his buddy back to life after the monster has killed him, and he ends up dead.
And he gets tricked, you know, into putting the wrong brain in. It's not really, that's not even his fault.
Yeah. Talking about the brain stuff, like this is so that brain stuff, there was the brain business, as I like to refer to it, because that becomes a motif from here on out. The brain business starts in this movie. The let's give him a new brain thing starts in this one. And then I realized that did you ever see Black Friday? So I think it's both Lugosi and Karloff, like kind of a sci-fi gangster movie.
I haven't seen that one yet. I think I've got it in a set.
It's an also ran in various box sets.
I know.
Yeah, it's okay. But like it's not really a horror film. It's kind of like a gangster movie with sci-fi elements. But the brain thing, there's like putting someone else's brain in someone is in that one. And so that's sort of being borrowed there. And then there's all this Wolfman stuff and all that. This movie is such a product of Universal horror up to that point.
Yeah.
That
it's going to get ridiculous when you get to House of Dracula. Like the end of, I think it's House of Dracula, the end of that movie, like the mechanisms are, it's House of Frankenstein. The mechanisms are going to go to like, we're going to put this brain in this guy's body. We're going to put this brain here. You're going to become a werewolf. And it's just like trying to keep track of all of it is going to be fun next week. I think.
There are forums devoted to that.
Yeah, we got to add that to the bingo card. You know, brain switches,
brain swapping. Absolutely.
I remember finding a Universal Monster forum where people are like, "Wait, whose brain is in the monster at the end of the House of Dracula?" Like.
Right. But look, this will carry over because in the next film, in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, now like Chaney Jr., which is more of a Wolfman sequel than a Frankenstein.
It really
movie.
is, yeah.
Yeah, it really
Civil War of that.
This is it's going to be kind of a running motif. Like by the time you get to House Dracula, like Frankenstein's in the movie for about 30 seconds, really.
Yeah,
like he makes
Dracula's barely in House of Frankenstein, so
yeah, that's true. Yeah. You're going to get like a brief cameo of the monster at the end, but really, like from this point on, you're going to get Frankenstein's monster is that kind of lumbering henchman without a lot of agency of his own. But going forward now, you're going to have Chaney Jr. as Larry Talbot and the Wolfman, and Lugosi playing the monster. And Lugosi was a little fun fact for next week's production notes. You know, in the original cut of the movie, he speaks and he's like, "I'm blind and I'm talking." And apparently, like his dialogue was laughed at and ridiculed, so they cut all of it. And it just made his performance like that much more ridiculous. It just looks like the monster is stumbling for no reason.
That's right. Because they ignore the fact that he is blind in that one too. So it's just sort of like they made it look like Lugosi's a fool. It's sort of that was a big element that sort
Yeah.
of, I think, said, okay, they laughed him off the screen, and so Lugosi was that was sort of the end of it. You know, within a couple of years, he was in exile essentially.
Yep. Or Bela.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bela.
Absolutely.
So is that book No Travel Returns? Is that?
Yeah, no, yeah, that's the name of the book.
Okay.
I haven't read it
yet,
yet, but it looks really interesting.
I'll put that on my list.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Any final thoughts on Ghost of Frankenstein before we sign off for the day?
I think Chaney is the mummy in the Mummy's Curse. And with that lumbering way of acting, I'm wondering if he puts in a better performance as the mummy.
He plays the mummy a couple times.
I think. Yeah.
The Mummy is sort of my least familiar franchise, honestly, as far as these go.
They're not my favorite. I feel bad about that, but
yeah, they can't all be winners.
They can't all be winners, indeed.
Yeah.
Well, Andrew, thank you for coming on with us, my friend, and
of course,
tell us what's going on in your neck of the woods. What's going on with the Dead Letter podcast?
So we got Sundance stuff coming up next. By the time this is up, we ought to have our Sundance, we do a selection of Sundance titles that we talk about. And so we'll have that one up probably by the time this is up. And then the Oscars nominees get up pretty soon. And so we usually do 1 or 2 episodes just devoted to the Best Picture nominees, where we kind of just talk them through and stuff. And so that'll be January and February. And then, in the summer, we're kicking around some ideas for our summer series. Because we try to have like a good, 6 to 8 episode run about something. Last year we did, because of Oppenheimer was out, we did Atomic. It was our Atomic summer. And we did the episode of that I'm really proud of, that if y'all want to seek out, is we did a double feature of Them and Matinee.
Oh, excellent.
Nice.
Yeah. And I put I programmed a few little shorts in there as well. Like I put the Duck and Cover short in there, and we talked about that a little. And episode 8 of Twin Peaks, The Return. And so I had a whole program for that set out. So if you want to look that up, that's the one I'm particularly proud of from the summer. But deadlettermovies.com, and we are on Instagram at deadlettermovies. You can find me on Letterboxd as I think you can just search Andrew Fabry, Fabry, and you should be able to find me. I'll be your friend.
Excellent.
Excellent. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And Brian, how about yourself, my friend? We've kind of joked around about all of the stuff that you have going on and all that you're writing about, but what's going on with Movies for Life, and what articles do you have coming up?
Well, I've slowed down on the writing a little bit. I just needed to catch breath a little bit, but
you just said how you're writing a 10-piece.
Well, I know. I just finished my big piece on the last Hammer films, but I gotta slow down a little bit. So that'll should be coming out sometime next month. And then Bloody Disgusting, I'm writing about the original Gojira. Nice. So that should be in the column pretty soon, if it's not already. And then Movies for Life, we just recorded our first official episode of the year, with a snowbound double feature of The Grey and Fargo.
Great.
And so we had a lot of fun with that double feature, so excellent. Apologies to our listeners in Minnesota.
All right. Where can folks find you?
Oh, you can find me various socials at Brian Waves 42. So Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, Blue Sky, Threads. I have a handle on all of them, though I don't use any of them except Letterboxd all that often. Sorry to say. So,
very cool.
All
right, listeners. Well, make sure you are following our site, podandthependulum.com. It's where we post all of our back episodes. You can leave us reviews there that'll go to Apple Podcasts and such. And you can also leave us some notes there. We've actually gotten some great little interactions with some of our listeners there as well, which we really appreciate. Follow us over on Instagram at Pod and the Pendulum. Follow us at Bluesky at Pod and the Pendulum, and Twitter at Pod and Pendulum. And I'll be honest, I use social media less and less. Like that last site, Twitter's just becoming depressing to go on to. Like I should probably spend less and less time over there, but we'll find places to interact with you because like interacting with listeners is fun. Yeah. One way you can interact with us is to rate, review, and subscribe to us everywhere you get your shows. Reviews go a super long way to helping new listeners find us, and we would really appreciate if you would leave us 5 stars and a few kind words. If you get a moment, you can do that. That would be great. Another way to help, consider becoming a patron of the show by going to patreon.com/pod in the pendulum and go there. We have a lot of bonus content up there. We have some other goodies up there as well. Almost 50 hours of content up there so far, and we should have double that up there by the end of the year. We'll be back next week with Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman. We're getting kind of like the Marvelization of the Universal monsters, which is interesting because Universal monsters would try to become Marvel with the Dark Universe, and how awfully that failed. But we're getting our first attempts of that here with Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, and we'll be back to talk about that next week. And Andrew, you'll be back, I think, with House of Dracula, right?
Yep.
Looking forward to having that on in a couple weeks. So we'll talk to you all then. Take care, everybody.